Have you ever gone overseas for 1 or 2 week vacation and holiday, and within a day or two you're looking around, you're saying, boy, I could really live here? Well, if you did, then this video is for you. Vacation is not permanent and things change. Living abroad is not a permanent vacation. It's more like the 4 seasons, and winter always comes, and it can be harsh and it can be cold. I've lived overseas for 30 years. I've had exciting times and I've had some very frustrating times. Almost everybody that I know goes through these seasons, and I've gone through the seasons multiple times. Each season is different length of time. This isn't to discourage you, this is to prepare you. Retiring overseas can be an amazing experience as long as you understand what you're signing up for. You know, when I was younger, I used to scoff at theories. Not scoff, I just never really took them seriously. It was like, I'm learning theory about something, I want to actually experience. Theories give you opportunities to understand experiences. They give you hooks to hang your experiences on, to explain them to you, and to help you understand what could be happening at the moment. When I was in Peace Corps, I learned the theory of the 4 seasons when living overseas. And it was one of the only theories that have really ever stuck with me over the years. For those of you who are interested in living abroad or interested in what it's like to live abroad, I remember being in Mali, West Africa, when I first went over in the mid-90s. And we're sitting in mud huts in the rainy season. Kids have never been out of the US, basically. We learned about the 4 seasons that we would experience as a Peace Corps volunteer. And often when we got back together, we joke about the 4 seasons we were in. And we could even identify what season someone was experiencing. And to know this is normal. So the first one is the one you always hear about, the honeymoon season. This is when everything is magical. Basically, what it feels like when you go on holiday or vacation for a couple weeks. Something drastic would have to really ruin it for you. You get to experience new foods, you're experiencing new cultures, going to different restaurants, you're trying new different things. Most people are, but mostly you're going over to experiment and to just enjoy something that's not familiar to you. The people are charming, everything seems cheap, culture feels authentic from yours. You oftentimes feel brave to experiment, to go out, to take chances, and you often have time to be a different personality if you want. This is when you're posting pictures of the sunset and the sunrise, and this is what you always see on Instagram and all these other social media. The feet propped up and on the beach with the ocean in the background and the margarita sitting next to you on the umbrella stand, and the waiter serving you on the beach, the selfies with the massage and selfies with the exotic different foods. And during this time you're thinking, why didn't I do this sooner? You're romanticizing the experience as if this is what it's going to be like all the time. Basically, you think you've hacked life. You think this is what life is like on a daily basis being in this country. This is when your vacation brain doesn't equal to the resident brain. You're not occupied with visas. You're not occupied with banking. You're not occupied with purchasing vehicles and negotiating. You're not occupied with dealing with the neighbor, with the loud music and the party night or the karaoke bar right around the corner. You're usually in a very tourist type environment until you've settled somewhere a little more normal. And then the reality arrives. I have so many examples from Mali. The first day we arrived, I remember it was atrociously hot. And we're riding on the bus to our first village where we would stay for 3 months and live in a mud hut. But I remember riding off on the dirt road in this bus, and there were cattle all over the road. We had to slow down to pass. I remember standing up excitedly with my little cheap camera taking pictures of the cows in the middle of the road. I've never seen anything like that before. So that was just a small example of how excited we were to be in such a different culture, something we only saw in National Geographic. The fact that I was looking at cattle and things like this That was the normal daily life. What was not realistic was my reaction to it and how exciting that would be every time, because I would see that basically for the next 3 years, and it wouldn't be as exciting. So basically, in the first season, you're a consumer, and then you soon become a participant in the environment. And then the reality hits. At some point, you're going to end up at season 2, which is culture shock. And this is the irritation season. This is death by 1,000 frustrations. This is when you have to start figuring out, how do I get my visa? How do I navigate the bureaucracy to get my driver's license? How many people need to sign off on my documents to allow me to stay in the country? Or how many days do I need to go back to the same department to find that my file has not moved on the manager's desk? This is when you have to first go to the local bank and fight through the crowd, depending on your country, of a disorganized bank where chaos seems to reign and there seems to be no logical order. A very simple transaction you've been used to a million times back in your own country. This is when the language barriers show up. This is when you can't communicate with your neighbor or your landlord because you need a translator at every moment. This is when you start experiencing the different work ethics of different cultures, the siestas, and people promising to show up to help you and they don't show up. Or the morning means morning or early afternoon, or not even, many times not at all. When you try to narrow it down to 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, they'll be like, yeah, something like that. Get used to that. And if they don't show up, depending on your country, you'll get a variation of a inshallah. If God wills it, I'll be there. Start noticing things don't work the same here as where you're from. And this is when you start also missing the small comforts of home and not having 1,000 eyes staring at you, or being able to go to the supermarket or the local market without being harassed on the street or haggled for this, that, and the other thing. It took me a lot of experiences to get through these irritations. I have a ton of them here in Laos, and then you just have to live with that. You have to learn to accept it at some point. It's not always a big dramatic experience like it was for me with the house, because I've had many of them over the years. It's just all the inconveniences. It's all the little things that stack up that cause people to burst. And this is probably the stage where most people don't get through. At some point, you might just get so aggravated you leave. And I've seen Peace Corps volunteers leave Africa within weeks. You could see them. They went through the stages. They got to the second stage very quickly, and they left within days. There were people who left within weeks. At some point, they just couldn't ever get through the second season of Irritation. It is the most difficult one. This is where most people give up and then take off. And I think there's a lot of globetrotters who do that. They stay just enough where the honeymoon season starts to end before they move on. And the sad part about that for me is you lose a lot of experience and a lot of personal growth and emotional growth by leaving too soon. It's like you give up too soon. There's no resilience. You gain something when you're able to push through that experience. And sometimes you might backtrack and end up through that experience again. Like I just found myself when I came into early retirement. I went through this season and I'm kind of still in it. There's a couple of things that are irritating me that I've not had to do in many, many years. I think because I've gone through it already and I know that my mind is settled that this is where I'm going to live, I am determined to get through this stage of these irritations. It's a psychology. And that's why understanding these seasons can really help you to know where you might be and know that one day you will get through this as long as you have perseverance. If you survive this season, something changes. Season 3 is the adjustment season. And this is when things change for you, or you actually start changing. Basically, you stop fighting the reality. You stop fighting things that you cannot control. You start learning how things work. You start adjusting your expectation. You find your routine and you start building relationships with your neighbors, with the social clubs that you belong to, people in the local market, the local vendors. You stop trying to change and complain about the country, and you start to understand the unwritten rules, the things that are not obvious. Basically, you realize that you were the problem. The country wasn't the problem, and you decide if you want to stay or not. This is where you decide whether you want the country to change, or you decide if you're going to change yourself and your attitude. Wake up, dude. This is basically when the excitement really wears off and life becomes sustainable. Life becomes a routine. Life becomes manageable and enjoyable. This is also when you stop comparing the country to everything. Well, in America, I did this. Well, in America, we did this. This is when you start making your new routine in the country that you're in with the resources that are available. This is when you start making friends. This particular season is short for me because I'm already familiar with this particular country I'm living in. I'm starting to settle into my routine in early retirement, and it's only been a month and a half. I'm reconnecting with old friends that I used to work with. I'm making new friends in some of the places that we're going to on a regular basis. So I can see that a new life is starting to construct right before my eyes. And as long as I don't let the irritability of all the other bad systems things ruin it, I can really make this enjoyable. This slides right into season 4, which is the acceptance stage. This is when you really start to integrate into the country, into your environment, into your neighborhood. It almost feels like you've been there for many, many years. It might take you years to get to this point, but as soon as it starts happening, you just realize I'm making a life here and I'm really enjoying this. You see the beauty and you see the flaws, and you can talk about it without getting emotional. You're no longer impressed by everything. You're no longer impressed by the differences or angered by the differences. It is what it is. You feel a sense of belonging and not belonging at the same time. I mean, I don't think I'll ever be accepted here, but I think you start seeing people get used to seeing you, and they'll start acknowledging you on a friendly basis. And you're not shocked by everything. I've been in Asia for 16 years now, and some of the things I still really don't like. Fortunately, I'm in the city, so I'm a bit removed from some where it could be worse. I think some of the animal abuses is very hard for me. The driving is very bad here, and because it's just sometimes I think it's careless. I wish people would take a little more pride in making their environment clean, because they'll just drop trash. Trash will be just laying in the street, and I know we have that in the cities in the US, but here it's a lot more common. The aesthetics are just not a priority here, and Laos is a very high alcoholic state. The beer very cheap, and they keep it flowing, and that basically keeps the people submissive. You know, you don't have any uprising or anybody that's going to go against the grain here. It's a very status quo type country. And the other thing is that's hard to take sometimes is the domestic violence, because of the alcohol related and the paternalistic type of society it is, in addition to environment issues and the pollution and the abuse of the environment. These are things that I see, but I can't do anything about, and I have to accept them. Sometimes you might find yourself defending the country to new expats, people who are complaining or not. I don't see too many people doing that. Most of the people that I know are acceptable of the way things are, even though they just say that they don't like it. There's certain things, and that's just going to be a fact. Some things you're just not going to like, but you don't have the emotion driving you to feel like you need to change that. This is a stage when you go back to your own home country and you kind of feel awkward. You kind of feel out of place. And I felt like this for many, many years. This makes me realize how much I don't really want to go back to the US to live long term or at any point. I just don't feel like I belong there anymore. The people I knew are the same as they were 20 years ago for the most part. I don't want to insult them, but I feel like I'm very different when I go back, and I don't fit in. Even when I'm with my family, there's parts of me that fit in. We're comfortable with each other. I don't fit into their lifestyle anymore. And not fitting in, not feeling like you belong, you don't belong in the country that you're in, and you don't feel like you don't fit into the country where you came from. So that can sometimes feel a little lonely at times. Like, where do I belong? Where do I fit in the best? And that can be both a loss and a gift. It can be a way to let go of the old things and just grab onto the new experience you're in, the new environment you're in, take it on with a full embrace. So that means you never really fit or belong anywhere at the same time. And I feel that, and I'm kind of okay with that. My wife and my family, they accept me, and that's all I really need. So just a reminder, moving abroad will not fix your unhappiness, because unhappiness will follow you everywhere. if you're an unhappy person. And it magnifies who you really are. And just remember that short vacations just hide the friction of life. Retiring abroad is a lifestyle design. It's not a lifestyle escape. So if you're thinking about retiring abroad, I encourage you to do it. I would recommend doing it at least 6 months in a country before you decide to move there permanently. And I'm not telling you not to do it. I did it, and I'm glad I did it. Just understand this. It's not a permanent vacation, and you're going to go through these seasons. So be familiar with them. So I think in summary, if you can get through the irritation season, you should be good. The long-term reward is something most people will never experience if they get through that. And you get to basically rebuild yourself into a whole new world if that's something that you want to do. And if it's a place you want to live. So tell me, which season are you in right now? Have you gone through these seasons? Were you able to recognize them when you were in those seasons? And if you're thinking of moving abroad, or you are abroad, tell me where you're at. So living overseas didn't make my life any easier. In fact, it's probably harder in many ways, but it did open a whole new world to me that I never would have seen before unless I took that first step. And I look forward to see you on the next one. In the meantime, God bless and take it slow.